Hi, welcome to Barefoot English. So today is kind of a special lesson. It's the first lesson with a new student. Her name is Khan. And let me explain to you a little bit about why she is a student with me and what we'll be doing over the next coming year as we work together. When I first arrived in Vietnam, I stayed in Ho Chi Minh City for about a month. I interviewed with many English centers and thought about living there. I didn't really like living in that city. It was very crowded. Uh, the air wasn't good enough for me, and I hated driving my motorbike there. But really, most importantly, was that I found that teaching in the English centers was not what I wanted to be doing here. I felt that the goal of an English teacher here should really be to help students communicate in English, to speak English. Without that, all the knowledge of grammar, vocabulary, all the rules that they know so well are pretty useless in the real world. They're not able to travel, they're not able to use that English in their jobs that they pursue. And they're somewhat limited by what all of that information provides to them. Instead, I chose to live in a very small, well, not very small, but a small town that was all Vietnamese. When I arrived here, there were maybe 15 or 20 other foreigners, non Vietnamese people living here. They worked at a variety of the schools and English centers in town. When I got here, I decided that I really needed to learn how to teach English communication to Vietnamese students. And so I started my own little program in my house, having lessons for both children and adults. And the focus of all of my education was communication, getting my students to be able to speak, getting them to be able to listen, and being able to be self learners beyond my lessons. I spent about a year and a half doing that, and it was very important. I learned how to help Vietnamese students in particular. While I was in Ho Chi Minh City, we were approached, foreigners were approached constantly by groups of young students from English centers with little clipboards or sheets in their hand to ask us what we commonly called the 20 questions. Some of those questions were really taboo in Western culture or in the or from the United States where I came from. And so it was always a relatively awkward experience. But the worst thing about it was that I discovered that the goal of the project that they were being sent out to do was to try and engage in conversation. But that didn't occur. What they would do is rattle off the questions one after another. They wouldn't listen to the answers and ask leading questions that might become a conversation. And so, like other people, I sort of began to play with them a little bit. I would mix up the answers and say things that really didn't make sense and realize that they weren't listening at all to the answers. So, for example, they would ask me, "What's my favorite food?" And I would say, "Die Hard 2." And then they would ask me what my favorite movie is, and I would say, "Thaw." They really, really weren't listening to what I was saying. And so it became so much of a joke. Now, why did I choose Khan as a student? About a month ago, I was sitting on the riverfront, just relaxing, enjoying dusk, which is my favorite time of day. The wind is blowing, the air is fresh. I can just relax for a little while before my evening lessons. And I was sitting with another friend of mine, an older gentleman from Sweden who's been here for many, many years. Khan initially approached him and tried to engage him in a conversation. And he's not the most conversationalist person in the world. So he eventually said, "Hey, why don't you go talk to David, me?" As she approached, I said to Roland, "Uh-oh, here come the 20 questions." And I was ready for the same kind of non-conversational questions that were going to occur. When she sat down, I was absolutely blown away. Her first question to me was, "Could you teach me some vocabulary about food?" Now, I had been thinking for the last couple days about two words related to food and how they don't really make sense because of the meanings of the words, but how we've changed them to use them today. And so I had this wonderful opportunity to actually engage in a conversation with her about these words. And that resulted in me choosing her as a student. She was obviously so motivated to learn. Now, as you might know, she's waiting to join us, and I'm going to invite her into the lesson now, and we'll dive in and spend about 10 minutes learning about this new vocabulary. So give me a second. She'll be joining us. I have admitted her into the room. As soon as she comes in, I'll ask her to introduce herself. And here she comes now. Give a second for the audio to start. Good morning, Khan.
Yes, good morning, Mr.
How
David.
how are you today?
I'm very good. How about
Awesome. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I just gave an introduction about you and why I chose you to be a student with me. And so you'll get to see it afterwards when I send you the recording. And as you know, we are recording this lesson. Um,
yes?
we're going to be learning today about your initial question that you asked me, the question that made me so happy because it allowed us to have a real conversation and also to discuss really some of the kind of strangeness of this vocabulary and the way it's used. So I'm going to share our screen now, and we'll dive into learning the words that I explained to you that day, and hopefully our viewers will find it interesting. And in the process, I'm also going to be showing them how, when I want to find something out or when I want to teach something, some of the ways that we do that using the many resources that are available online. So let's share our screen real quick, and we will dive right in here. Now, I'm going to keep us kind of big so that we can see each other. I like that. And then they can also see us on the screen as it records. Now, as you recall, you asked me the question about, oh, I did not mean to move that around. You asked me the question, can you teach me some vocabulary about food? And I had actually been spending a couple days kind of thinking about the use of two terms in food and how, based on their real meaning, they don't, they're kind of inappropriate to be used, and that misappropriation of their meaning is reflective of a societal approach to these words. So let's dive in right away and just talk about what I said. I told you two words: decadent and rich. Decadent food and rich food. Now, so we're going to start as I always start. I do a Google search, define decadent. That's where we begin. And we find the Oxford Dictionary for decadent. Just as a reminder for anybody that is trying to learn vocabulary, when you look up words on Google, there's a little speaker sound here, and if you click it, it tells you how to say the word, which is very helpful because learning vocabulary without that, without knowing how to say it, it doesn't really help you so much. So the word decadent, let's talk about the word decadent. As an adjective, it means characterized by or reflecting a state of moral or cultural decline, as in a decaying, decadent Britain. As a noun, it's a person who is luxuriously self-indulgent. For $500,000, he offers rich decadents the chance to lead a deadly safari. It really does represent, on its own as a word, it implies a lot of negativity, moral decline, cultural decline, basically self-indulgence, being selfish about things. And yet in our society of today, we've raised people up. The billionaires are looked at as kind of heroes, and they live this life as if they deserve all of this luxury, even if it is decadent. It's a state of moral or cultural decline. In Vietnamese, and I always do this for my students, we can see the translation as well. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce them. Maybe you could say them for us.
Sa súc CV.
Okay, so
no, but the first meaning in Vietnamese, I think, um, not lots of Vietnamese know this word, but the second sa súc, lots of people know.
Lots of people know. And how do they use it in Vietnamese?
That is the word that when people talk about the person that uh, he 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 live in the luxurious house, yes, and he don't he doesn't focus on working or studying, and he just play.
Oh, okay. So it has a similar meaning, really, to the English. Are those people viewed positively in Vietnamese society, or are they viewed negatively?
In negative way.
In a negative way. Okay, we'll see. So now we have this strange word that implies a negative meaning in both Vietnamese and in English.